Welcome to Rochester Living with Mark Siwiec and Corey James Moran, brought to you by Elysian Homes by Mark Siwiec and Associates. This is episode 186. Mark, are you enjoying third winter?
I actually wore a scarf today, but more importantly, can I introduce a new topic that I think we need to? This week we're introducing illness of the week. So go ahead.
Usually it's my kids.
Go ahead.
It was me actually and my wife. We assume it was a case of food poisoning. It's been blamed on me. Bad risotto.
Bad risotto.
I guess don't wait 5 days to make the HelloFresh meal is the lesson that I've learned here.
Oh, I mean,
come on, it wasn't even a week. Unbelievable.
So that concludes this segment of illness of the week.
I mean, it's nice.
Thank you very much.
It's a nice change of pace.
It is
because again, usually it's the children. So
yeah.
So I'm feeling much better today. My wife is just a little bit behind me. She had it for breakfast, not for the dinner that I made. So that's why we're about a good 8 hours.
But you're doing better.
Yes. Yeah.
You're gonna need to if you run off in the middle I'll just carry on.
I think I'm good. Okay. I will not go any deeper into the experience. I don't want to chase anyone away because we've got a fantastic guest that's going to be joining us. Well, she's here right now, Amy Machamer of Hurd Orchards.
Hi.
We will talk all about Hurd Orchards and your fascinating story.
Yay! I can't wait.
In a bit. Mark, anything else before we jump into real estate? It's chaos out there.
It is chaos. Go ahead. Yeah.
I wrote on a property $136,000 over asking, no contingencies, and lost. There was another property that I didn't end up writing on, but another member of the team did. They went $175,000 over asking and lost.
Who wrote?
This was Zach on a property out in Webster.
Oh, he talked to me about this just an hour or so ago.
Very unique property. Out kind of in the wilderness, had a pond that was shared with a neighbor, and it was like kind of a lake view, but not really a lake view because it was very far off.
Wow.
But yeah, listed it at 500, and he wrote to 675. Didn't win at that number.
Wow.
So it's wild out there right now. I've decided I'm only going to do off-market deals for the rest of the year. That's my plan.
What was the statistic that Ed gave to us yesterday? Is it 20%?
I had food poisoning, so you have to tell me.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I think that so far, one of the things that we enjoy doing is trying to sell these properties off market.
Yep.
So we've got a buyer and a seller, and we make the marriage 20% of the time. It turns out this year.
I had 2 over the weekend. Before the food poisoning.
Just incredible.
Thankfully.
Incredible.
But in terms of what's out there, our update for the market, Monroe County saw a very slight increase, 362 single-family active listings right now. That's up from 350 after we saw the big jump the previous week. 6-county region, we're at 570. That's actually down. It's 573 for the 6-county region. Under contract and pending, that's just a little bit below from Monroe County. We're at 696, down from 697. In the 6-county region, we jumped up a little bit, 1067. That's up from 1063.
Wow.
So still nothing. It's
nothing.
It's confusing and it's frustrating. I would say thus far, this is probably the most frustrating market for buyers, which is saying a lot.
I would agree. Next week, I actually sat to anthropomorphize ChatGPT in the way that I do, and that way that so many people do. It's a little bit odd. We'll eventually
your best friend.
To it. Yeah. So I sat and I chatted with ChatGPT for a while last week, and I want to talk about it next week. But the conversation really was okay. Take all the data that you know about real estate as it's playing out in the United States, and what municipalities have seen an increase in inventory, and what municipalities are remaining stuck pre-pandemic levels, and take into consideration interest rates and population growth and new housing starts. Can you predict when it is that Monroe County will actually start to see an increase, a significant increase in the number of new properties coming to the market for sale? I'll leave it there. We're going to wait until next week. And what's that called?
It's a good tease.
Thank you.
Well done. Well done. Mortgage interest rates, we still continue to ride the seesaw or the roller coaster, whatever you want to call it on this one.
Merry-go-round? Let's go with merry-go-round.
Yeah, that's true. It is kind of the same, right? 6.79 jumped up a little bit from the 6.72 from last week. Again, it's still one of these deals. 15 years at 6.21. That's up from 6.18. We did have some economic data that hit. A couple of things. The jobs report came in. That was on Friday as we record this on Wednesday. Now, we added 151,000 jobs in February, which was below what the expectation was of 160, and in line with the 12-month average of 168, which confirms the labor market is roughly balanced, I guess you could say.
It depends on, I mean, whether I'm reading CNBC or New York Times, whether, Wall Street Journal, everybody seems to have a little bit of a different spin on it, which is, okay, great, we've got, continued solid growth. And others are saying, oh man, it came in below expectations. Others are saying this is far below what we had experienced for years.
Sure, yeah.
So
we're getting accurate numbers now. You got to throw that into the mix.
Well, yeah, that's true. So depending on who it is that you're turning to, it was either a good report or perhaps a bit ominous as to what might be coming down the pike.
It probably lies somewhere in the middle. Right?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, for me, it was, it was an oatmeal. It just right, not too hot, not too cold.
Unemployment did tick up slightly, up to 4.1% in February, away
Right.
from 4 back in January. And again, I don't know if we've necessarily seen the impact of all the movement with federal employees yet. So
We haven't at all.
right, which is kind of interesting.
Did you see what happened yesterday?
I did not. I had food
Oh,
poisoning.
that's right. You were like, you were in the bathroom.
Hey, Alex,
Yeah.
every time I mention food poisoning on this podcast, can you just add a little ticker somewhere?
Yeah.
I think we're at 3. We're at 3 right now.
Yesterday, the Department of Education was more or less decimated. Yeah, so
Do we need that? Is that important?
I know. It's really terrifying. But so many of these layoffs have not yet, because the layoffs really began in the middle of February. And these job numbers that were reported this past Friday really are reflective of job numbers in February.
Sure.
So we're only going to start to see the unemployment numbers start to, I think, tick upward starting next month's report.
The other big piece of economic data that came through was the CPI, which was at 2.8% in February. Again, similar to the jobs report, less than expectations.
Yep.
But we're still pretty far from the 2% that we were shooting for, right? So is this another situation of people are looking at it as potentially good or potentially bad?
Just diving into those numbers a little bit more, headline inflation, CPI came in at 2.8%. Core inflation came in at 3.1%. Those were both 0.1 of a percentage point below what it is that was expected or anticipated. And again, depending on who it is that you're talking to, the markets initially rose significantly on news of the data. The markets now are flatlined. So it's just sort of like a meh, a shrug of the shoulders on the part of the 3 indices. So I think that people at this point are less, which is so unusual, that people are less focused on CPI. They're less focused on jobs reports, and they're really sort of like sitting there like, okay, what tariff is being imposed now? And then looking at their clock, their watch, an hour and a half later, realizing it's been rescinded or something new has been. So I think it's that chaos, which is in large part driving the markets at this point in time. So yes, we are still a little bit above where it is that the Federal Reserve would like. The neutral rate is 2%. So we're still, we're still 0.7 of a point above that, but it does show that we were heading in the right direction. Sadly and unfortunately, I think moving forward, we're going to find out that tariffs and some of these other policies really will prove to be inflationary.
Which was the fear from the beginning.
Yeah, which was the fear, right from the beginning. So I would imagine that probably it will start to see some of that reflected in inflation numbers probably a couple of months down the road. It takes a little bit of time to catch up.
What do you think Fed Chair Jerome Powell is thinking right now?
Well, actually, did you see that already yesterday? Trump is getting ready to announce his nominee for the new Federal Reserve Chair.
Pushing him out the door.
Pushing him out the door.
Is it another 2 years?
No, 14 months in advance of when his term expires, and there's nothing the President of the United States can do to push him out prior to that. And that's a little bit terrifying. And again, as I've said in previous installments, he needs to be very, very careful, because if he installs somebody into that position who banks world financial markets, et cetera, you're going to see panic worldwide if it's simply a political crony or a hack.
Do you think it's maybe someone with WWE experience or reality TV that will be in that position? Possible.
Yeah, so it is a woman that he appointed to the Federal Reserve during his first term. So she actually is credentialed.
Experience?
Yeah, she is credentialed, and her family actually, and this might be a good segue. Her family actually owned for several generations a bank.
Wow, look at that.
Yeah.
Talk about families that have owned things for generations.
Women in particular. I'm really excited. So you actually know how excited I am about this.
Very much so.
I have known.
Mark's been fanboying for the last week, knowing this
I
interview was
really
coming.
have. I know, it's embarrassing. So for the past 28 or so years, I've gotten to know Amy Machamer and to a lesser degree members of her family as a result of the farm that she and her family own, Hurd Orchards. Hurd Orchards is a sixth or seventh
I'm the seventh generation.
generation
Yep.
farm.
Next generation is 8.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I've gotten to know through the years her mother, Sue, with whom she owns the farm. Your mom's 92 years old right now.
91, but yes.
Okay. And then Amelia, your daughter.
Yeah.
Who is now in college.
Just finished college.
Okay,
Had
so
her first
I
job.
know intimately this family so well. I
was
might
close.
be
Very
getting
close.
some of the details wrong, but there's so much about Amy and her family that I find really, really interesting. I mean, the fact that it is a seventh generation farm, the fact that it is owned by women, which I think is just so interesting. I love the fact that through the years, I have really come to respect and revere agriculture as a means of employment, as a business. Amy is an incredibly intelligent woman, educated at Amherst, and she's taken a lot of that, and she's implied her intelligence toward growing the farm and modernizing the farm. I love the fact that through the years, this is a great time of year for me. I have been waiting for the first of the red-winged blackbirds. And the first of the forsythia, because I have learned through the years to study and understand and know what is playing out in the world around me as a result of using my eyes and my ears in a way that Amy has taught me. And she's taught me specifically in the beginning of November of every year when I sojourn with a number of friends to Hurd Orchards. The family bought a threshing barn probably about 27 years ago or something like that. 25
Something
years
like that.
ago. Yeah,
1994. So actually 31.
Okay, there we go. So they bought this beautiful threshing barn, yeah. And it is the holidays do not begin for me until the first week of November of every year. When it is that I sojourn, I have the first of several Thanksgiving dinners, and it is just magical. And if I don't attend, the holidays really are lacking for me. So that is just a very, very long-winded way of saying that I am just so grateful to have you, Amy, and I look forward to chatting with you a little bit about your experiences at the farm. So
Well, I'm really excited to be here too, but I want to turn the compliments around. First of all, those are a lot of compliments.
Yeah.
That's a lot. But I just have to say, Mark, you just have been. You're remarkable. Let's just say that. You're remarkable because you reach out and absorb and appreciate. One of my big things in my personal worldview is appreciation, and you do. And that has shown through over those decades that you've been quietly supporting us. And I just have to tell a story about you too, because in the pandemic, you approached us with the most out-of-the-box thought to support our business. And I know you were doing creative things to support so many, both individuals and businesses, all around you in that full, beautiful circle that makes up your world. And my hat's off to you, not just for that, but for the way that you, that you care about community and you care about people and things that are important, and I love it.
Oh, well, thanks so much, Amy. I
No,
appreciate that.
It's very genuine, very genuine.
That's great. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Kind.
Yeah.
Say something nice about me. I look great after food poisoning. That's 4, Alex. That's 4. So Amy,
You're funny.
thank you.
You're
appreciate
very
it.
fun.
Thank you. I do what I can. So talk about the farm again. 7th generation. It's
Right.
kind of mind-boggling. So we're going back to the 1800s, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, gosh, I don't know what part is interesting to you, so I want you to lead me. But
How about the start?
Okay.
Start at the beginning.
Actually, I don't know this. So who
Came here.
Who was the first to
Right.
lay claim to that land and
Right.
and put seed to soil?
Right. Well, our family came, the Hurd part of the family, and then there were other parts too in the very early 1800s. And the man's name, the Hurd family name, was Parmenas Hurd. Do you love that? Just love that
It's
for
so
what it
1800s.
is.
Wow.
Parmenas Hurd. In any case, the Hurds had come to New England early on, centuries ago, and eventually went to Western Connecticut and New Hampshire, and then fought in the American Revolution, and then came west. And our family, our part of the Hurd family, came to the little village of Holly because guess what? The Erie Canal was proposed to go through.
Okay.
They came knowing that it was going to be,
smart.
a brave new world. And there are wonderful little reports in old pioneer journals and things about them wanting to open a produce brokerage. Doesn't that sound very modern,
Yeah.
But they did many things. And so our family's been there ever since. And it isn't just one property. The other thing I just want to share is that, we own many farms. Don't think of that as big and huge at all. What fruit growers do, and we are fruit growers, has always been, and to this day do, and you're in the real estate business, so you have to know this, it's important, is that what fruit growers do is that they buy additional acreage because on any one deed here in New York State, where our land was not leveled and orchestrated by the federal government as it was out west, you have many different soil types on your farm, and so that soil that is specific to fruit, which is the best soil, I say that with a bias, but it's also true. It has to be deep, and we've talked about it so many times in the tastings.
Yeah.
Fertile and well-drained and just perfect, and also for fruit in proximity to Lake Ontario in our region. And so those farms were purchased over time, and still to this day that goes on. So in our family, we have multiple farms. It isn't just one property, but my mom lives in the homestead, which is really fun. Yeah. And we've been there ever since. And, it's fun. Family businesses in general are such, at one time, in one breath, there are two things at once, which is always what I love about the world, when things are more than one thing and the unseen. And so it's both an incredible privilege and also, a bit of a responsibility to say, we're going to carry this forward. And every single generation, and even within a generation, you're not following trends, but following a path of your own carving about what will this farm be next, So I hope that under my leadership and my mom's, we can leave this farm not in beautiful shape, just in terms of environmental conservation. Of course, that is almost like bedrock, right? But in terms of all the things that it takes to be a farm, my great-grandfather, J.K. Hurd, always was famous for saying, fruit growing is a lifetime proposition. It's not something, you don't go out in the spring and say, I will have a fruit farm today. You just don't do that.
Sure.
Trees are ordered years ahead or budded years ahead. Soil has to be prepared. And then years to bring any crop to fruition. Do you love that word, to fruition?
Yeah.
Fruition. That is our word. We own it. And, and so it is this long, long arc that we look at, which is also really very beautiful.
So I want to talk about that long arc. Was there ever a point in time where you thought that you weren't going to continue and perpetuate
Mark.
We're getting personal.
The family heritage? And then an adjunct to that is, to the degree that you might be comfortable, and certainly you don't want to impose anything on Amelia, but do you think that she is then the next generation? So
the question of the day.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Did you have any other options?
Well,
of course we had options, but...
Well, of course, yes. And the answer to the question is that absolutely every single day, I think every farmer weighs, can I continue doing this, and is this where I should be? Farming is a beautiful thing. We've talked so much about it in our programs, and I could elaborate at length about many anecdotes and many ways that I think it's inspiring and beautiful. But it also is an alternative lifestyle in our modern world, right? Let's just face it.
Yeah.
It is when the growing season is the growing season, it is 7 days a week. If you're a dairy farmer, it's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. That is alternative right out of the starting gate, right?
Yeah, it's not a job. It's a life.
It is, and it also is, I think, particularly as fruit growers, where everything is so enormously sensitive. Every single thing, every bud, every living thing is sensitive to so many dynamics, whether they're market dynamics or weather dynamics or your care dynamics, how you cut a branch and prune it. We're pruning right now, coming to the conclusion, will affect the tree's life and outlook for years down the road. So there's a lot at play. But, we're very high risk takers, all of us in agriculture. There is no guarantee for anyone. And that's alternative too. That is very alternative mindset. You have to be game. You have to be game. And so are there moments when, when you think, wow, could there be a calmer path and an easier path? Oh yeah, gosh. Here's a funny story though. Are you ready?
Yes.
So, or at least I think it's funny. My wonderful college roommate, Susanna Grant, years ago when I first came back to our farm, and I was in my 20s, blah, 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 and I'm way out in the countryside, right? And I would go to New York to meet with college friends, or I'd go here, I'd go there, but still, I was out in the countryside. And because I'm a farmer, my work is in a geographic place. It isn't transportable. I'm not an anesthesiologist, I'm not a real estate agent. It is there. It is there, and it is rooted in the ground. And so many of my social, parameters were, let's just say they were maybe a little bit limited or whatever. And finally, I was talking to my wonderful friend Susanna. I said, Susanna, I just can't find even a role model for a woman farmer in her 20s on this 1,000-acre farm out in the middle of Orleans County. I said, she said, well, let's think for a minute. Let's just have fun thinking about it. I said, the only one that comes to mind is Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah,
Sure.
Yeah.
She had England, and she had to. That was
Had a lot of land.
That's it. Well, then that was it. Like it was prescribed, right? And so there's that tension also probably in any family business. Again, I don't want it to be just agriculture. That is absolutely exquisitely beautiful, right? And also you're meeting that challenge every day.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question in
Well,
any way?
I was going to ask it again, which is
Okay.
only because I've always been fascinated by this. Of course, you had a lot of options, but did you ever consider that you would do something other than continue the family's legacy on that land?
Yeah, sure. Of course. I think if I had taken a different path, I was a painting student, an art history student, not a student of agriculture. Although, as a farmer, you're learning all the time. Like it is nonstop education, as I'm sure it is in real estate. And I also, I love architecture, which is why I was asking you so many questions about this beautiful building that we're in. I love architecture. And I feel like environment, sets your perspective or changes your perspective or leads you to a perspective, landscape or walking into a beautiful stair hall as the greeting to one's home or business. And so I could have done all of those things, but it took me years to realize that I came back to our farm. I came back in 1984. And I came back to our farm really for the basics. Let's just say it. I loved it, period. I loved it. I loved my family. I loved I loved what our farm meant. And for me, I think I'm a natural conservationist with a small c, because I think for me, the caretaking of things that have meaning is an important part of who I am. And it took me years to be able even to say that in a world that values success in very black and white terms, in a world where your degree, following your name or the accolades you can get from having some position in the world are so important to all of us. And so I, really was left of center, or maybe I was right of center, I don't know. I was somewhere off center. And it took me years to kind of be able to even articulate to myself and then, more clearly to others that, I am here. The other thing was I want to just say, because it has to be said, is that farming is enormously creative. In some ways it's not, and in some ways it is. If you have an idea, you make it happen. You create that. And fortunately, in our family, there is the whole mindset that being supportive of ideas. My grandfather, Leland Hurd, passed away in 1990. Oh my gosh, he was a stitch and a half. Always fun, sharp as a whip, incredibly creative person. But, he used to make jokes about the way I would do new things on the farm. He thought it was fun and funny, but all for it, right? And we have some famous fun stories in our family, how we started our jam kitchen, and he and my grandma bought, the tractor trailer load of jars from Ball Company in Muncie, Indiana, when we called and learned that they were, a lot of famous, where it was just in good faith, if you have an idea, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's try, well, again, it goes back to what you said about we're risk takers, right?
Mm-hmm, exactly.
I would love to hear about the family dynamic. I have kind of a window seat into, a family-run business as well.
Yes.
And that, for those who have not experienced that, It could complicate things a little bit, right? Because it's not just sitting down at the dinner table and having a conversation about your day and the quote unquote normal things you would think of. I mean, it's kind of all the time, right?
It is. Yep. Yep. So you can lead me along for what you're curious about from my answer, but I would say you already said one of the things that's the most important, and that is that even though I think if you went to a counselor, they would say a separation of your work and your private life is really important, and maybe finding those balances or whatever modern terminology would be. But the reality is the business is your everyday. It is your living and your breathing. And so every member of the family is involved in that, and at every age. And so that is something that I think is compelling. I think it's fascinating and wonderful. It also can be a lot. All of a sudden it can just be a lot for any one individual because it just doesn't stop, right? But one thing on the really upside is that, everyone from a child who learns that the workings of your parents' mind, instead of going off to a job, you're actually hearing that job every day because it is discussed at the dinner table, or there are meetings, or there are phone calls that are nonstop. You're a part of that breath. And as people age, my mom is 91, and my business partner, which I think is also very alternative, but very great. The hat may change a little bit. Maybe your role is slightly different now, but there is also a place. So those things about a family dynamic I love. I think also, though, family businesses, because we're high risk takers, so we'll kind of fold it into the practical, that can also be a lot in a family dynamic because the economics of that business are of our own craft, right? It is us creating that in the circumstance of, growing a beautiful fruit from the land and whether that's possible. But it is our wits that make that happen. And so the tension about, about the well-being and exactly which direction those underpin everything. And I view that as an enormous positive. Do you?
Well, it connects, right? It's another connection.
Yeah, I think, my daughter Amelia, I'm going to talk about her for a minute, so she's fabulous. She's 22. But, I'll just make one comment, really, and that is only that, because it is to your question, and that is that, when she was growing up all along, so many other kids, even my nieces and nephews, had a particular glowing skill. They were a soccer star, or they, ended up being the valedictorian, or they were a dancer of note. And my beautiful Amelia had interests all the way around. She was a horseback rider, and she did many, many things that were very interesting. But if I, as her mom, were to say, what is Amelia's gift in the world? What is her talent or her skill? It is that she sees everything in the 360. She sees the broadest possible spectrum, and she's pulling that all into her thought about the world. And I think that is probably just her personality, but it also is the environment that she grew up in. She had the opportunity to see all, right? In our tiny farm. I'm not all, but her world was this big. It was not separated into boxes. It was inclusive and continuous, and I think that made for someone who, I'm hoping she can apply that beautiful kind of comprehensive thinking to the world going forth. I hope that I'm answering your question. Maybe you want me to talk about buds and blossoms now.
Well, I was going to go down one or two. Let's just finish up this, but I'd love to talk to you about buds and blossoms because I do have one of the things that's always impressed me is every day during her high school years.
Yes. Oh, yes.
You would drive Amelia.
Yes.
From your residence, from the farm, to Allendale.
Harley.
That's right. Harley. Right across.
Yep. No, you're perfect. You're right.
Like 4 houses from my house. Every single day. And that was a ride of about 40, 45 minutes, I would imagine.
Well, or if there's snow, or if
2 hours
there's an
then,
accident.
right? Yeah, sure.
Yes. And then that's two ways. So the person doing that driving, and there are other families who do this, by the way. The person doing that driving goes in and back, and then again in and back. So for the student, it's in and it's back. But for the driver, it's in, back, in, back.
That's 3 hours. So
yeah.
Again, you went to Amherst. She went to Harley. You understand and revere education and intellect, and you've brought that to the farm. What do you see as perhaps as farming and agriculture evolve? How do you think that you can use, and you do it, you've already done it in terms of your creativity. Can you talk a little bit about how it is that you use your intellect and your education to actually make the farm thrive in the way that it does?
Well, I think there are two parts to your question, actually, because I think in one sense it's our farm and how I hope to be able to affect it thriving. The other is, how do we affect the absolutely profoundly important industry of agriculture in our nation and where it stands now? And can I affect that going forward? And I hope I can in my tiny little way. And so I think that our family's valuing of education, which is obvious from the things you mentioned, has been pivotal for me. And it's also allowed me, through the experiences that I've been privileged to be able to have, going to school at a lovely place that was not bound by a job description, but was bound by a dedication to, educating students to be fully thinking people. That's maybe the easiest way to say it. I think that those things have freed me of any constraints. I think my family's, unending curiosity about learning, our dinner table conversations, which are an extension of education, whether it's newspaper articles, as you were even discussing, you're doing it today, here this morning, or, books that one is reading, or things in the world that need to be understood better, so that constant learning it is a nature of my family, and also the educational experiences that I've had, I think has just freed me from feeling constrained by the typical or the expected. I mean, you mentioned it already. My mom and I are women business owners. We also are women farmers. And, that's not a subject that is something that we need to dwell too long on. I'm so lucky to have grown up. I have two sisters, grown up in a family where it was never even an issue. So women's empowerment, all of the words that we put around that, whatever that is, was kind of a non-issue in my life because my family was just like, yeah, go do it. Just let's do it. So that was a non-issue. But having said that, when you're at, and don't take this the wrong way, and I hope that if an apple grower or fruit grower is listening, you will also understand the perspective. But generally, in a room of 600 fruit growers, there will be me as the farm owning and orchestrating fruit grower, and then there will be other women who are integral and effective, and this isn't universal, but generally speaking, they may be in research, in education, in extension, in advisory capacity, in supportive roles on the farm, but not just that be all and end all. Now, that's not universal. I do know other women farmers who are everything, but it is very unusual.
There aren't many that, yeah.
And again, not unusual to have women involved in agriculture. Very unusual to have women be the bottom line. Let's just put it bluntly, the absolute rock bottom line. And so that in and of itself has also meant that our whole path that we've carved has been different. It has taken a lot of courage, to be different, and we are different. And we follow our own thought about what we think is exciting. We follow our own thought about what we think is a sturdy, worthwhile path to follow, but we're always reevaluating that too. And sometimes, I call it the shiny pickup truck syndrome in farming, but sometimes you see from the outside looking in, which is always dangerous to do, another operation that's huge and the pickup trucks go shining by and, they're talking big at a meeting or whatever, and you think, oh my goodness, is our path really the right path? So it's not, a guarantee. I hope that my voice, I'm just going to say something now. It isn't necessarily what I came actually to talk about, but I just do want to say that I hope that my time on our farm, through all of the outreach that we do, it provides a chance for the non-agricultural American public, whomever, our region, to have an access point, to feel comfortable to ask questions, to bring me here today, to feel as though they have someone responsible that they can view and hopefully get a step closer. It is a very, very big worry to me that I think a rock bottom problem in our American agriculture, which is not an industry that at this moment in time, in 2025 in particular, perhaps, but also even in last year, farm reports were saying that the U.S. farm economy was in a recession, even deep into last year in 2023. There are a lot of worries out there, and I see that every day on our farm. And one of the things that I think is never able to be, the nut that can't be cracked, is how do we get the American public to value food and farm products? And I don't think we're there yet. And I think we keep trying, Corey, Mark, we keep trying and we keep trying at Hurd Orchards. And I hope that if anything, my voice and our work can loudly say to an average American, look again, think again, take a moment to think, and value the food that you have. And I don't mean that in any corny way or any sappy way. Sometimes when you talk about agriculture, you risk, sounding like Mother Earth figure, and I worry about that a little bit.
Corey, where do you want to? Do you want to talk about buds and blossoms, or do you want to take us somewhere else?
That, or I want to cover some of the events that take place. 'Cause I think that's really unique spin too. Again, when you just close your eyes and you envision a farm, and if you've never been to Hurd Orchards before, what you actually would end up seeing, I think, is quite different.
Right. Yeah. So the events are fun, and we've already got May planned. And so, just as a little plug, you can now sign up online, and we'll share our programming seasonally. By seasonally, we mean May, June is spring, July, August is summer, autumn, and then the winter season. But the programming, much more fun than that to talk about. The basics is that the programming in our farm has been our wonderful jewel of a way to communicate, because what we really have been trying to say to people all along, Corey, is see what we see that's inspiring.
Well, you just talked about it, right? Putting value into the food. I think that is the vehicle that you're using.
Value into the food, and trying to be so specific and so precise about what it is that is moving and what it is that we see, which is not just, farm images fall into these categories, right? And you have a cartoon farm like Old MacDonald, and then you have the woe is me farm, everything is so hard.
Dorothy Lang, yeah.
And sometimes people say to me regularly, oh, it's so hard, isn't it? And I think they're all picturing like muddy rubber boots, and I think, okay.
Or the famous Dorothy Lang.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
the Dust Bowl, yeah.
And we have all that. And then there's the evil corporate farm, it's very difficult. And then we have some newer ones as well. But they're really very static, those images. And so what my mom and I have really tried to do, and of course this is just evolving over time. It isn't that one day we sat down and just said, this is what we are going to do. It just kind of gently evolves. But, what we've tried to do is illustrate the magic of a moment. What is it when, we've talked about it in some of our tastings, when the juice rolls down your chin on a peach on the hottest August day. How can we tell you if you can't actually step out there and be that? Or maybe it's a transporting experience where you're out in the serenity of picking blueberries and the woods is filled with, the song of birds and the creek is going by. Maybe it's that. But we try to find ways to just articulate through taste, through the setting, through the spoken word, through the entire experience. This is what is so uplifting. And that's what our events are really about. Each one, I thought about it last year a little bit, and I thought about each event we host, whether it's, lilacs, herbs, and apple blossoms as an opening luncheon on May 14th this year. I think it's May 14th. But each one is like a little essay. Each one is a thought. Oh, it's this, right? And so I did go to Amherst College, and, the poet laureate that is not official of Amherst College is Emily Dickinson, right?
Yeah.
And, when you read an Emily Dickinson poem, and I actually can tell you one now because it is an inspiration to me, the thing that is beautiful is that with very few words, she was precise, like exactly precise about capturing what it was that was transporting about the world in which she lived. And it's not that Emily Dickinson is the reason for Hart Farm or our outlook, but her precision is what I hope our events are. I hope they're absolutely crystal clear about something that is fleeting, again, a moment in time, something that is hard to put your finger on. The fact we've talked sometimes about continuity, that we're doing the work that is ancient biblical and pre-biblical work as farmers, and yet we're doing it in a modern world.
Can you swirls. And I know we want to get to Emily Dickinson in a moment, but could you make this more concrete for those who may not have, because I understand exactly what you're saying, but I think you also need to let everybody know that you also grow flowers and the importance of the flowers. And so can perhaps choose any of your events, but can you describe what it is that people are seeing when they walk into the threshing barn and what it is that they're tasting? Because I think that would be very, very helpful. And then we'll turn to Emily. How's that?
Anything you want. So, okay. So one of the things that's exciting to me is that a lot of the things we're trying to articulate through our programs are hard to articulate, which is where the power of them comes in my mind. So what we've done, we had a barn raising in 1994, and we raised our barn in the old way. We had an actual barn raising. And at that point, my mom and I just needed a little extra room, right? We just needed extra elbow room for our market. And we did not want in any way our market to be big and commercial. We wanted it to be very intimate and very much, a tight space. And so we had this barn raising. We didn't really have a vision. My mom, who is sharp as a tack, said, Amy, almost everybody who crosses our threshold has made an effort to come here. It's not exactly as the world is going by the front door of our market. So if I were someone coming from wherever, I would want to sit down, and have a refreshment. I would want to relax. And so and then we kind of backed into our programs a little bit because at first we thought, we'll just serve lunch, right? Or we'll just serve a fare. Well, that backfired because it's very hard when you're farming to have 7 people show up and say, we heard you have fabulous quiche, and then we're like, well, it takes an hour to make a quiche. That didn't work, right? So then we did them at one time, and then they had to have a reservation, and then we couldn't handle it if people had a reservation and they didn't show up because we had worked so hard. So then it was one menu a day because it's the season that we're trying to describe, and then it was, you have to come at one time, you have to have a reservation, you have to prepare. How weird is that in our world? And so then we had to say something. And then that became our voice. That became our ability to say, come into this beautiful barn, which we left in its, our barn is from 1802, in its 1802 entirety. Wow. So it is the actual boards. We did not, oh my gosh, the voices for putting windows in and drywall and
oh God,
all that stuff. And we were like, and we weren't sure we were right, of course. We were guessing. We were like, no, how would we sacrifice this feeling of being in this very practical cathedral? It's just great. So there's the barn. And then we've grown cut flowers forever because even when I was a child, my grandma had beautiful gardens and my sisters and I would bring down buckets of peonies to put out with strawberries in June, and then we made some strawberry jam, right? And then, so flowers have been a part of who we are. And so we've evolved that over 40 years to grow enough to fill that barn with our paintbrush of flowers. And that is just looking at the earth around us. Autumn starts really in the end of July. Nobody really knows that, but it does because the earth changes. Everything is a little bit more golden. The green grasses of June and May have gotten their seed heads on them already. The goldenrod just begins to get its tips. The peaches are gold. It's no longer, blueberry and cherry season. And so we try to say, okay, this is the earth's cue, and we try to gather that, whether it's wild or whether we've grown it, and just create that so that people feel it. And to your point about, I think you talked about someplace with big and small arrangements or something and the size of a room.
Yes.
So when we first had our barn and we hosted our first thing, we put little bundles of flowers on every table, and they were diminished. They were dwarfed because the barn is so tall. The top of the peak is, I don't even know how many feet. It's
30
way
feet
up
or
there.
something. Yeah.
Something like that. It's way up there. And so everything was dwarfed. And then I was in New York City later on, months later. And I went to some of the classic places, Metropolitan Museum and Tiffany's and, whatever. And everywhere that was a grand building or place, I noticed something. that you went in and the flowers that they had were not diminutive. There was something there, whether it was on, I don't think it's this way anymore, but the old mahogany cases in Tiffany's. And then they had a bank of display cases around. And in the middle, on the top of the old mahogany case, on every one across the room, were huge 4-foot flower bouquets, or in the Metropolitan Museum. So I came back and I said, Mother, you know, we have to have an anchor in our barn. That's why we always have the big bouquet, because that says to people when they come in, ideally, you know, it says to people when they come in, this is the moment. This is what we want you to feel. It's right there, and everything else radiates. And then the food also, you know, we're kind of strange because we do use all of our own harvest, and everything is handmade. And so that takes a lot of people to do. But again, it's, you know, have you tasted red currants in July that are, you know, the most electric flavor you can imagine? And nobody even really remembers how they taste because they're so long forgotten, which is a wonderful story in and of itself. But, you know, do you get it? Do you taste it? Do you feel it? Do you see it? And then, you know, we want to share the underpinnings of that, how interesting it is to grow something or why it grows well or it does.
Yeah, well, I remember you brought the team
Yes.
to Hurd Orchards a couple of years back, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I still, as you were talking, I was back there in the beautiful space. And then, you know, what sticks out to me, I mean, all the food was amazing, but it was the applesauce. It was the best applesauce I've ever had.
Yeah.
And to this day, whenever I see any, that is exactly where my head goes. So you've connected with me on that.
And sure. You know, applesauces are every day. I mean, literally at home, if it's not a fresh bowl of fruit or piece of fruit, you know, fruit for us, I want everybody who's listening today to fall in love with fruit. I just do. You've just got to fall in love with fruit. But fruit is like the fresh part. Fruit is not just a snack. So, you know, at our homes, all of our homes, we, without thinking, the apple is sliced or the peach is sliced or the pear is sliced or the bowl of blueberries is washed, and that's out with a fabulous cheese or a wonderful dip or a little spice or something like that while you're cooking dinner. And in the autumn, by the time you get to autumn and all through the winter, the second thing that's happening in preparation for dinner is applesauce.
There we go.
It's every day, and it's wonderful. The most basic non-recipe of all recipes, and absolutely, particularly if it's, you know, the variety is really, really terrific. Just an alive flavor, you know? So
it was different. Again, it sticks on my brain from
Yay.
2 or 3
That
years
makes
ago.
me
I want to
really
go back.
happy.
But would you agree that you walk into that barn in the beginning of November and there's a chill in the air?
Yeah.
And there is, and I'm not even doing it justice. Norman Rockwell himself could not have more evocatively conveyed. You walk in and there are just dried flowers hanging from the ceilings, and there are old farm ladders, and there are sometimes wagons, and there are candles burning, and it is the most beautiful space, and it just brings to life all that, and I actually love it also. And I don't think I've ever shared this with anybody. I also love it because it very much mirrors our cycle, our selling cycle, because we
interesting.
really do run from the beginning of spring until the middle of end of October, and then we just throw ourselves back.
To breathe.
And we're like, okay, I'm going to take a little bit of time and enjoy the fruits of my labor.
Yeah.
And so I end that by stepping through the doors of your barn. So
That's
yeah,
great.
Do you want to talk to us a little bit about Emily Dickinson?
Oh, well, I don't need to do more on Emily Dickinson, but I just, well, I will tell you that one poem because actually...
That's what it was. Yeah.
Yes, I will. So I don't know. Do you know it? How the Sun Rose? Do you know that? No. I don't even think she titled her poems. They were just numbers. You know, there were no titles. But listen just to this for a minute. It is the poem. I think it is. She's capturing the rising of the sun, right, and the setting of the sun. So she says, "I'll tell you how the sun rose, a ribbon at a time. The steeples swam in amethyst. The news like squirrels ran. The hills untied their bonnets. The bobolinks begun. Then I said softly to myself, that must have been the sun. But how he set, I know not. There seemed a purple stile that little yellow boys and girls were climbing all the while, till when they reached the other side, a dominie in gray put gently up the evening bars and led the flock away." So if you think about the sunrise just for a minute, do you get it? Do you feel it?
Oh.
Can you just feel the electricity of the sun rising and everything bursting, and then the quietness and subtlety of it just slipping away suddenly and it's gone? in something that is indescribable, but she describes. So it's not that that poem inspired our farm in any way, but what does inspire our farm is the razor sharp capturing of that in a way that makes you look again, right? And that's what I hope our events, when you walk into that barn, that's what I'm trying to do. That's what my mom and I are setting out for. It's not just a yummy meal, although if people come for just a yummy meal, wonderful. We love it, right? But what we're trying to do is just to say, look again, think for a minute. Anyway, I hope that's
Well, you guys do a
helpful for you.
fantastic job. I mean,
You are so sweet.
It really, it's magical. I think, right? That's the way to put it. Magical.
Yeah. It is so important, and everybody should enjoy. Hurd is spelled Hurd for those who aren't aware of the spelling,
Yep.
and the website is
HurdOrchards.com.
There we go.
HurdOrchards.com. There we go.
Nice and easy.
Very easy.
Amy, thank you so much.
You're welcome so much.
I mean, incredibly thoughtful.
I love being here.
Yeah, and thank you for that poem. I look forward to. You said something a few years ago that actually sticks with me, and it came at a point in time which, and I'm not even sure whether it was your words or it was somebody else, but I remember being struck by the line, "Where there is beauty, there is hope."
Yeah, exactly.
And I think in the times that we're living through right now, that sticks with me. And you said that a couple of years ago in November.
Yeah.
And so I turn to that with frequency.
Yeah.
Where there's beauty.
But maybe also pertinent to now, last year our themes were two, the summer tasting and the fall tasting, and it was because of my mom. I don't know if you remember the story, but my mom, last year we had two very difficult, because climate change is a very big issue in the fruit world, all the time. But we had two very devastating frosts in April in Western New York, and we knew coming through the two nights that it was a game changer, and it was. So my mom, age 90 last year, I'm talking with her like a day after, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be something. This is going to be hard. And I don't know if you remember this, but so speaking, we're going to just bring the conversation together. Speaking of family businesses and how everyone has a role, right? And how the family business is like all-consuming and all. So I say to my mom, oh my gosh, these two nights, what will we do? We knew then, and my mom said, so pertinent to our world now, we're going to find what's beautiful, and then we're going to take care of it. And so that was our theme for last year, very similar to In Beauty There Is Hope, but it was finding beauty. So that was our summer tasting theme, and then our Thanksgiving tasting theme was caretaking. So it was finding what's beautiful and taking care. And, maybe that is something we can all, I thought she was pretty brilliant to say that.
I completely agree.
Anyway.
Amazing. Oh, anything Rochester-wise you want to talk about, Mark?
There's a lot. Well, there's some new restaurant openings.
Yeah,
gosh, what a segue! This is just such an abrupt segue.
Perfect.
Like I just want to sit here and I don't know,
Soak
have
in
a
it.
cup of tea and enjoy Amy's company for a short while. But we do have a job to do, unfortunately, which is sort of wrapping
I would say,
up.
fortunately, we've got good stuff to talk. Well, mostly good stuff.
We do have a job to do, which is to wrap this thing up. And so we'll talk for a few minutes about what's going on here in Rochester.
We got to experience Bonnie and Clyde in Fairport.
Yeah, but what did you think?
It was phenomenal space. It's unlike anything else in Fairport, that's for sure. It's
Anything else in Rochester, right?
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an old bank building, gigantic, right? Building. So very, very different from anything else you're going to find in Fairport. Again, the fact that there's something new and exciting, you can kind of feel that energy, right? I mean, the place was pretty full by the time we got there at 5.
And I had dinner. I had dinner there afterward.
Yeah.
And it remained just crowded. Ran into your in-laws.
Oh yeah. As I exited, they walked in 2 minutes later.
Literally. Yeah. Exactly. And the cocktails were fantastic.
Yes.
Cocktails were just spot on. So hats off to them. I mean, I'm so impressed and wish them the best of luck.
Yeah. And then you are going to go to another new restaurant later this week.
This evening, actually.
Oh, okay. All right. Redwood, which is from the same owner as Red.
Yeah. So Richard Reddington it's his second restaurant, and God, I mean, he is.
How many times have you been to Red?
I'm not exaggerating when I say a couple of hundred.
Yeah.
I mean, literally. He is an incredibly talented individual. So we're really looking for the cuisine is going to be French,
Which is super interesting. Again, I think we talked about it last week. It's not what he had originally intended.
Right.
With the opening of Patron Saint, he decided, maybe let's do a little shift.
Yeah, yeah. So we're looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to a nice grilled fish, and a nice glass of I don't know, probably white burgundy or something tonight.
Are you going to appreciate it more after a conversation today with Amy?
I appreciate everything. I know it sounds so silly. I appreciate everything so much more. I mean, my eyes and my ears are open, and my taste buds this evening will be more attuned to what it is that I'm actually enjoying. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'll report back next week.
Okay, sounds good. And then the only other really, I guess, big thing you could say going on in the Rochester area, and it's real estate related. Brighton got the reassessments, and people are, as always, losing their minds.
Oh yeah.
Well, they haven't reassessed since 2018, which is odd because typically it's 3 to 5 year periods of time. So to go that long in the market that we've obviously know very well and have experienced, people are shocked when one person said their assessment went up like $500,000.
Yeah, I received. Yeah, actually, what's funny about that number is that I received a text message this morning from somebody whose assessment went up $500,000. My assessment, I think, went up $600,000, something like that. Yeah. So I'm not particularly excited about it.
Well, I guess we'll see how it shakes out, right? These are always interesting because there's always this initial panic. But at the end of the day, the towns normally play with the tax rate. And so people automatically assume I'm going to be doubled or tripled in my taxes.
Well,
and that's not normally the case.
Unfortunately, as I was reviewing my reassessment,
Are you doubled?
I'm not doubled, but it's going up significantly. I think it's going up $4,000 a year.
Okay. Yeah. It's not nothing.
That's that's a lot of money. So we've got Molly from the team who's starting to work on a few
Getting your comparable sales to fight it.
Yeah.
Again, that's another big point. You can battle these.
Yeah.
Some people find that sometimes the assessment actually comes in late, so then maybe don't talk about those. Just leave it where it is.
Right.
But yeah, interesting stuff. I'm just curious why they waited so long.
That is unusual, and I'm certainly perhaps a better.
Were they waiting for you to move there? That's what it was. That's what it was.
Perhaps a better tactic would have been to announce that our new assessment is coming out, and this is the first time in 7 years. So
Prepare yourselves.
Yeah, prepare yourself. And get ahead of the curve, get ahead of the messaging, get ahead of the anxiety, the fear, the anger.
But I don't think any of the towns do that. We've seen this play out over and over again as we've seen reassessments come through throughout the last several years, where we've seen these big jumps in valuation.
Yeah.
They get some. Maybe they should get a good PR company to help them.
Do you know of any?
Yeah, I got a couple in mind.
Okay. All right.
Anything else you want to cover, Mark?
No. I think this is fantastic. Awesome. Actually, I do have one. We've got a really fantastic ranch, 4,000 square foot ranch.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about real estate?
Yeah, we are talking about real
property?
estate. Yeah, thankfully, slowly some properties are emerging. So we've actually got quite a number of properties coming on the market for sale. It seems in April, a late start to the year. But this property on Whitestone, it will be on the market for sale when this podcast drops. 4,000 square feet, a list price somewhere in the high nines. We're expecting multiple offers. Completely renovated top to bottom. The light fixtures in this place are spectacular. Every room just has a light fixture that is really, really beautiful. So we're looking forward to listing that for sale on Friday and seeing how that plays out.
Okay. So ElysianHomesNY.com. You can go and see that listing once it's up and live.
ELYSIAN.
There you go. People always ask. That's right. All right. Well, thank you again, Amy.
I loved it.
Appreciate
Thank you.
your time. And thank you for watching and listening. We'll talk to you again next time.